Good evening. So this month is my turn to give the regular 3 or 4 days teaching that we have organized since 2 years. 3 of us, 3 Geshes, give 3 to 5 days evening teaching every month. So today is my turn. And the weather turned out to be quite cold today, but from tomorrow onwards it looks good, so don't get discouraged. Anyway, I have chosen, because we have 3 days, evenings, so I have chosen these 2 very precious texts. The first, as you have already got, I have made a copy of both the English and the Tibetan version. My purpose of doing so is to really make sure that we get something, not only just listening to me and then go and forget. That's what we all do all the time. And I'm not here to waste your time, especially in this cold weather, So my target of the LTWA or myself is to ensure that Dharma sinks into our mind. That's my purpose. So that's why I make special effort to collect all the translations and make a printout and things like that. And because we don't have much time, so I've chosen these 2 texts, short texts, but they are extremely, extremely precious texts. The first text, Sakya Pandita's instruction on parting from the 4 attachments, is actually a commentary. It's only 1 page, but it's only a commentary to another short, very short text, which, according to the history, is taught directly by Manjushri himself to Sachi Kunga Nyingbo. Sachi Kunga Nyingbo, out of the 5 supreme Sacha masters in Tibetan, which is Sachen Kungwa Namga. So out of this Sachen Kungwa Namga, the first Sachen was Sachi Kunga Nyingbo. So Manjushri gave him this teaching when he was 12 years old, imagine, direct teaching. And then in the case of Tsongkhapa, many of you might know or you may not know, he's a very, very prolific, and I'm lucky to say that I've got this opportunity to study many of his major texts also. And so I know how prolific and how, what a great scholar he is. But even him, in the initial stage, Manjushri did not give him direct vision. So there is another Lama called Lama Umaba, who used to be almost like translator between Tsongkhapa and Manjushri. And then later on, Tsongkhapa, of course, undertook a lot of retreat and purification and practices, and then he got direct teaching, many direct teachings from Manjushri himself. So this short text, the second short text, which is called the 3 principal aspects of the path, is said to be taught by Manjushri to Tsongkhapa. Okay, but directly he has written for some other students. So anyway, I'm really impressed, and why I've chosen this text is not only they are so precious, but also given our time and the situation and the distraction, and many of us, fortunately or unfortunately, are not able to get the gist of the teaching. You see, something we need something ready to eat. You see. So if you read the old past history, then you have these 5 major treatises, wisdom, perfection, madhyamika, and so forth, which the monks in South India, they spent years fathoming and studying those texts. But then, of course, not everybody has the time or the patience or the fortune to spend so much part of their life studying this very deep philosophical text. So for that purpose, the masters have started writing shorter and very well arranged texts like the Stages of the Path, Lamrim, which Adhisha studied in Tibet by the Lamb of the Path to Enlightenment, then followed by many commentaries like Tsongkhapa's, the major, the bigger, the Stages of the Path, the middling Stages of the Path, the small, Stages of the Path, and so forth. So this is one of the shortest version of Lamrim taught by Tsongkhapa. And this really sums up the essence, which is three principle, the main aspects of the path. So these are really like cooked food, ready to eat. So that's what we need. And I'm happy to share this. I'm fortunate because I have to teach, so I also have to read, prepare. So for me it's very useful. And so therefore let us make it a point that we are really able to get almost like the main outline of the Buddha's teaching by reading these two texts, right? So first of all, cultivate a good motivation. That life is short, there are too many things to know, and we do not know how long we are going to live. And this is actually a quotation from Shantideva, where he says, life is short. There are too many things to do, too many things to know. And we do not know the actual span of our life. Therefore, just like the swans extract milk from water, similarly we take that which is really necessary, not everything. And I have myself now of late, I'm not anymore a young man, but I've started thinking that, I should not be wasting time doing this, doing that, There's so many mostly useless things to do in this world, especially in the internet and other platforms, so many, 100,000 things. And we proudly call our age of information. Yes, it is true, there's a lot of information, but much of the information is junk information. Right? So we can't afford to just spend our time looking after those junks all the time. Yes, we are all human beings, so we make mistakes, we get distracted here and there, but it's important to repeatedly remind oneself that I cannot afford to waste my time like that. Because this precious human life that we obtain today, don't take it for granted that we are going to get it again and again. So we'll talk more about this later on, right? So therefore, now if we start reading that commentary by Sakya Pandita's instruction on parting from the four attachments. Now, with the translation there are always disagreements. Here they've used the word attachment. I prefer using the clingings. Some other people might want to use some other word, but it's really almost like the obsession, clingings or obsessions. So Sakya Pandita, of course, is a great scholar who also used to get this vision from Manjushri. So this is a short commentary by him on these 4 lines. I prostrate at the feet of the Noble Lama. He starts by saying that I prostrate at the feet of the Noble Lama. So here we need to understand the meaning of the Lama. Lama means somebody who is higher, somebody who is superior. Superior in terms of their knowledge, and more importantly, superior in terms of their kindness, love, and care for suffering sentient beings. So right at the outset, I would like to repeat what His Holiness always says, that the true Lama is one who cares more about others than oneself, who cares more about future lives than this life. So when we give this kind of definition, then it is hard to find a qualified Lama, you see. There are many who have the title Lama, of course, but in terms of actual practice, it's not easy. So here we are talking about the genuine Lama. So in other words, it's also talking about the importance of such a spiritual teacher who has that not only knowledge but who has that direct experience. Even if you want to learn carpentry, you need to have a teacher. Carpentry is something that we can see directly, but still we need somebody to teach you. So now here when we talk about Buddhist Dharma practice, and especially something related to many future lives, we are talking about unknown area where only somebody who has some kind of experience can guide us. So therefore a qualified teacher is very important. But that does not mean to say that you should start running after all the people who has the title Lama. Because there are many scandals also these days, you know that. They have the title but a lot of scandals. Like anywhere, human beings are human beings. We all make mistakes, you see. So they take advantage of you. If you are a Lama, you take advantage of their title because you had a lot of students, a lot of followers, you take advantage of them. If you are if you are if you are a prime minister or president, again you take advantage of their title. It happens all the time, you see. So there's no point just blaming them. The important thing is that you should take care of yourself so that you are not cheated by these people. Use your common sense, your intelligence to find the right person. Even in terms of marriage, you need to think twice before marriage, you need to find out about the good qualities. So similarly, okay, Mr. Pandita himself somewhere says that even when you do a business of buying and selling horses and cows, you need to do a lot of investigation. How young is the cow? My father was a very good, people used to nickname him animal doctor, So he sees the teeth and so many things of the animal to find out how healthy they are, how young they are, and so forth. So similarly, Sajja Pandita says, when we spend so much time to investigate, even in small petty businesses like selling and buying horses and cows, then what need is there to talk about examining thoroughly when making a relation to the Dharma, when making a relation to the teacher, because we are talking about a well-being that is related to us for many lives to come, right? So therefore it's important to find a qualified Lama. Basically means good teacher. Finding a good teacher is important. So I prostrate. That means to such a qualified teacher, you show your humility. Prostrate means bowing down. Physically you bow down, verbally you sing praises, and most importantly mentally you respect. And it is humility that makes you receptive for higher qualities. It's not that now today we live in a world where everybody says we are all equal, why should I bow down to anybody, you see. There's one way of thinking, but what we are talking here is, in reality, if you practice a little bit of humility, you become receptive for higher knowledges. But right in the beginning, if you get puffed up, inflated, thinking that why should I bow down to anybody, I'm equally good, I have the human right, individual right, whatever excuses you take, if you do that, then you're already puffed up, inflated, just like a balloon. Inflated. On an inflated balloon, you can't put water. Water will not stay on that inflated water. So therefore it is important to practice that humility, that receptivity for appreciation of good people, appreciation of good qualities, thereby appreciation of Dharma. So I prostrate at the feet of the Noble Lama. Having obtained a body, human body, with all the freedom and advantages, so we have leisure, we have time to practice Dharma, we have facilities to practice Dharma. So don't say I have no time. These days everybody says I'm busy. I don't know why they are busy, for what they are busy. Really, everybody says I'm busy. To meet anybody, you need to make an appointment. It's to a great extent, it's ludicrous. Because it's not important you are busy. What is important is what are you busy about? What are you busy about? In real issues like practicing Dharma and many getting higher education, knowledges, we are not busy. So we are busy with small useless distractions, meaningless things, right? So it is important to not to cheat yourself by saying that I have no time to practice Dharma, right? Because we get time to sleep, we get time to eat, we get time to do so many things. Then when it comes to doing some good things or Dharma practice, then we say, I have no time. This is sheer stupidity, fooling oneself, you see. And I told this story several times. Once His Holiness was teaching to a big group from France. At that time I was not his translator, I was just listening to his teaching. Then during certain period, one French woman asked the question, His Holiness, your teaching is so good, so wonderful, but in the West we are so busy, so what should we do? Then His Holiness said, whether you want to practice Dharma or not, it's up to you. At that point I thought, His Holiness, this time you're a little bit blunt, But he was not blunt, he was really saying the right thing. He was saying, whether you want to practice Dharma or not, it is up to you, it's your choice, nobody is forcing you. Meaning that if you want to do something, if you see the importance, You have to find time. Musicians find time, singers find time, football players or cricket players, they all find time. So when you say, I have no time, you are basically saying, I'm not very interested. This is the last thing I'll do if I have nothing else to do. So very often I'll use one or two Tibetan words as a masala spice. Yeah? So having obtained the body, even in terms of this body itself, not just talking about what has been taught in the text, but in terms of the very structure of the body, you compare it to other animals who have to walk on 4 limbs. Our being able to walk on 2 feet. If you read the history of how all this came into being, it's a lot of benefits there already. Right? So, with all the freedoms and advantages, so basically saying you have time, you have facilities. If you are a cow, there's nothing you can do. You are not a cow. So you have those facilities. Your senses are intact and so forth. Encountered the precious teachings of the Buddha. And not only you obtained this precious human life, wow, you also obtained precious teaching of the Buddha. How many people have access to this? Of course, every teacher, every religion will say, oh, how lucky you are. But that's something you have to think. But at least from our viewpoint, as somebody who is interested in Buddhism, as somebody who follows Buddha's teaching, we do think that it's wonderful, it's very, very precious. Okay? And genuinely arouse the right attitude. That's why you are here in this cold weather. Right attitude. Now we need to put the Dharma into practice without any mistake. So this is what he is really saying. That's why I like this text. Talking we can do all the time. Reading also we can do. The main thing is practice. That is the most difficult thing. That's the most difficult thing. Yes, it is true we need a lot of knowledge. Yes, it is true we need a lot of knowledge. But what is even more important than knowledge is practice. We already have a lot of things that we know, I should not be doing this, I should be doing this, but how much we are able to do from that, you see? That's the problem. So reading text is just like reading the prescription of a medicine. But just reading the names of the medicine, that will not improve your health. Help recover from your sickness. You need to actually take the medicine, eat the medicine. Now we need to put the Dharma into practice without any mistake. That means to practice Dharma without any mistake, you need to have some knowledge. Right? For this we must take to heart and practice the parting from the 4 attachments, as I said, which is taught directly by Manjushri to Sachin Kunga Nyingbo. And this is, I like this text so much because it's so simple, there are only 4 lines. We can all memorize it. And our young Tibetans, we have this book. If you want to buy it, this is a small book, not very expensive, 135 rupees. We publish it in the library. You see, read this. It has the root text and all the 4 or 5 commentaries in Tibetan. And then the 3 principal aspects of the path, that is also there in the library, the English translation, which I did several years back when His Holiness taught a long commentary on it. We have published that also. So important to have this text. Read them. So what exactly does this imply? Now he's talking about the parting from the 4 attachments. Not being attached to the present life, not being attached to the 3 realms of samsara, not being attached to your own self-interest, and not clinging to some true reality in things and their characteristics. Na in Tibetan, if you cling to this life, then you are not a religious person. You are not a practitioner. If you cling to this life, if you have obsession or attachment to this life, then you are not a practitioner. So we need to memorize this. Now in terms of actual practice, let us talk about this with the 3-fold normal process of teaching. There is preliminary practice, the actual practice, and the conclusion. So in terms of the preliminary, when you do this visualization on the 4 points, first we need to take refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. As a Buddhist, we should take refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, if possible 3 times a day, 3 times in a night, or otherwise several times whenever it is possible to take refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Now why should we take refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha? Who are these 3 guys? This we need to explore. You see? And of course, why we need to study these texts? The main purpose of all the countless teachings taught by Buddha and his followers, great scholars, is that they have seen clearly that all sentient beings, including human beings, want happiness, do not want suffering. And some of you who have attended my talks before, I told this 100,000 times, and I'm going to repeat this 100,000 times in the future also. This is something that we need to remind oneself all the time. I want happiness, do not want suffering. I want happiness, do not want suffering. Not only that, I want long-lasting happiness, not an iota of suffering. There's not something the Buddha taught you, this is not something your parents taught you. It's the way you are. You are born like that, wanting long-lasting happiness and not wanting suffering. And it is actually good news. By birth, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering shows the possibility that if you make the effort, you can have that long-lasting happiness and you can remove that. This is really good news. But many of us don't pay attention to this good news. We don't know this good news. We don't know this hidden potential that is there within us. So therefore we need to remind oneself, I want long-lasting happiness. And from where are you going to get that long-lasting happiness? Can you get that long-lasting happiness in the modern way? By scientific, technological discoveries and by flooding the market with all kind of shiny gadgets and goodies and things like that? I have asked this question to many places and everybody. It's so interesting when I ask this question. I've asked this question in America, in Russia, in Jerusalem or Israel or in South Africa and Singapore, everywhere, in here, Dharamsala, everywhere. Everybody shakes their head, no. We will not get that long-lasting happiness and peace from outside of us. We get some idea of that. That long-lasting happiness and peace must be cultivated from within. Now cultivating from within means much of the suffering, it's so interesting to see much of the suffering that we are experiencing in this world is actually unnecessary suffering. Unnecessary suffering in the sense because of lack of knowledge we are suffering. So it's unnecessary. If you have a little bit of knowledge, awakening, you don't have to suffer. So therefore when we say that long-lasting happiness has to come from within, what we are saying is you need to change your perspective. You need to change your mental outlook. Now when I say change your mental outlook, mental perspective, I am not saying that you just without thinking you just conform your perspective and attitude to the teachings of the great teachers like Buddha and so forth. I am not just saying that. What I am saying is conform your perspective, your outlook to the way things are, to the reality. You cannot cheat reality. For example, death is a reality, which we are going to talk very soon. Death is a reality. Doesn't matter how many times you close your eye, doesn't matter how many times you repeat, there's no death, I'm not going to die. I don't like, I want to enjoy. Who says there is death? I don't believe. Will that help you get rid of the death? Impossible. You will never be able to do that. You will never be able to do that because that is a reality. So therefore, to deal with that reality like that, there are only 2 ways of doing it. One is, as I said, just pretend there is no death. Another is accepting the reality. Now when you accept the reality, there is a death, it's going to come, it can come any time. It may be a little bit shocking, it may be a little bit challenging, but once you understand that, you will be fine with that. Not only fine, but you will be able to learn so many lessons from that your life will be completely changed, completely transformed. Therefore, some of the scholars, they say, talking about the God, enlightened being, we are not talking about the real issues. If you want to talk about the real issue, talk about death. Think about death. Death is something that has been following us right from our birth, following us like shadows. You see? So if you really think about that, do some meditation on that, your life will be completely transformed. You will be a totally different person in terms of your thinking, in terms of your relation with others and so forth. So therefore, what I was saying was, as a preliminary practice, take refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, because we want that long-lasting happiness and peace. And what obstructs us from getting that long-lasting peace and happiness is the sufferings. Sufferings come from negative actions. Negative actions come from negative emotions. And the way to remove negative emotions from the very root, that process of completely removing the negative emotions is taught by the Buddha. So Dharma is what he has taught. So we need to take refuge to the Buddha, to the Dharma, and the Sangha, those who practice, those who encourages us. So that's why whatever practices we do, we need to take refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, and with full understanding. I'm just giving you a short description, but you need to study a little bit more. Okay? Why should one take refuge in these three things? So taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha is a process by which you make yourself, your practice different from the wrong path. There are wrong paths that does not take refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. They take refuge in a mountain or a river or a sun or a creator God, whatever, you know. I'm talking from the Buddhist perspective. I'm not saying that has no benefit. That's a different subject, okay? All right? And then the second preliminary practice is So when you take this refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, then you should repeat another 4 lines, which is very similar to these 4 lines. And these 4 lines of teaching is very popular in the Kagyu tradition, where the 4 lines says, having taken refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, then you say, may the 3 precious Buddha, Dharma and Sangha bless and transform me so that my mind goes to the Dharma. And Dharma becomes a true path. And the path without any mistake. And the mistaken appearances arise and appear as primordial wisdom. Tanda dikhi de dawre. Chu lamlan dobra chinjelops. Lo chusun dobra chinjelo. Chu lamdr dobra chinjelo. Lam chuba sebra chinjelo. Tuna hisu chabra chinjelo. So dawre. Okay? So therefore, and then the second preliminary practice is cultivation of bodhicitta, which makes your practice special or different from the inferior paths. Inferior paths are paths where you think only for your personal liberation and so forth. Okay? And you can cultivate bodhicitta by reciting that 4-line prayer, Sangha Choda Soja Chonamla, which you all know. By reciting this line, you can cultivate both taking refuge and also cultivation of bodhicitta. And then with the actual practice, out of the 4 topics that we discussed, the first topic is if you cling to this life, then you are not a Dharma practitioner. That you have to say to yourself, if I cling to this life, I am not a Dharma practitioner. We need to repeat this all the time. If I cling to this life, I am not Dharma practitioner. Then therefore you need to remove this clinging to this life. What does that mean? Not clinging to this life. Not clinging to this life does not mean that you should not do anything for this life. Because if you don't do anything for this life, then you will die of starvation and so forth. But clinging, obsession, it's the obsession. It's the clinging. It's the attachment. That's the problem. So for this practice, you should sit in a cross-legged Vajra posture, and as we already discussed, take refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, cultivate bodhicitta as we do with all other practices, and then repeat this line, Sendila Hena Chopame. If I cling to this life, I am not Dharma practitioner. And thereby make effort not to cling to this life. Now, what is wrong? What is wrong? What wrong is there if I cling to this life? That's the question. So there now you read this short commentary from Sakya Pandita. To explain this further, it is futile to be attached to this life, since it is like a bubble on water, and the time of our death is uncertain. It is futile to be attached to this life. If you cling to this life, he says it is like clinging to a mirage, thinking that it's water. Will you get water from there? You will not. So therefore, what we are experiencing is really like a mirage. You are not going to get that long-lasting peace and happiness because of its impermanence, because of its fragility, because of its uncertainty. These days I've started speaking on finding happiness in an uncertain world. If you bring this Dharma teaching into a more modern context, it's really the question of finding happiness in today's uncertain world. And particularly in today's modern world, there's so much fluctuation, uncertainty, distraction, that it's really difficult to concentrate. And many people are already suffering from attention deficiency, you see. So therefore it's really finding happiness by understanding the reality, which is the reality of impermanence and so forth. So therefore, if you cling too much to this life, then you will end up doing everything for this life. That's what we do all the time. Most of the time, as we already started by saying that we all say we are busy. Busy for what? Small things for this life. Small things for this life, not important things, small things for this life. You're always busy. You are on the deathbed, about to die. And I have started thinking this about myself. As I said, I'm not anymore young. Then I started thinking, still arranging, starting a new project. Go hell with you. Sometimes I feel like that, You are about to die, still starting a new project, especially for yourself. If it's for others, it's a different thing. For yourself. The unfinished job is like an old man's beard. The more you pick, the more it will grow. Ordinary activities are like children's play. It will never come to an end by doing, but they'll come to an end by stopping. So if you really want to do Dharma practice, many useless things that we are doing in this life, we have to stop that. Because it's not going to give you anything. It will only make you tired. 37 Bodhisattva practices. By running after mistaken states as true, you get exhausted. So that exhaustion comes because of running after mirage, seeing that as water. Now this we can easily relate to ourselves by thinking, how are we spending our life? As Kongtang Tempe Dome says, Tamju Chiju Majung Nihuchi, Chego Sene Nihuchi, Majung Sene Nihuchi, Misetung Vietnam Thari. Not being able to do Dharma practice, you finish 20 years. Then you finish next 20 years by saying, I will do Dharma practice. So you are already 40. Then after that, you're not anymore young. Then you say, I could not do Dharma practice. That's your biography. That is your story of your life, you see. So this is really true. And so that's why now here at this point, what he's primarily talking about is, in order to stop clinging to this life, you need to think about two things. One is how precious this human life is, and how difficult it is this human life to obtain. Right? When you have this reluctance to do Dharma practice, you know, to stop this, then you need to think, can I afford to do this, having obtained this precious human life? For example, if you suddenly found a big lump of gold, will you sell it for 10 rupees? Let us say 10 kilos of gold or something. Will you sell it for very little money? No, you won't, because you have seen how costly, precious it is. So similarly, if you are able to see how precious your human life is, in Buddhism we call human life precious human life. Precious human life primarily because of your mental capacity to do great things. I compare it to nuclear energy, you see. So it's a really big mistake. Having obtained this very precious human life with so much capacity to do good things for oneself, for others, if you just waste it doing just running after food, clothing, things like that, they're not so different from other animals who doesn't have that capacity, that intelligence. So don't waste your intelligence. Don't lose this opportunity. That's what he's saying. So that's number one you need to think in order to stop this reluctance to do Dharma practice. And then even if you are able to remove a little bit of this reluctance to do Dharma practice, if you come a little bit forward, show some interest to do Dharma practice, but there is no seriousness, including myself. We have some interest in Dharma practice, but there is not much seriousness, there is not much hurry, there is not much haste. So we keep on postponing our Dharma practice. Yes, I will do Dharma practice, but only after my retirement. We come up with so many excuses. I will do Dharma practice, but only after my marriage or whatever, you know. You keep on postponing your practice. That postponement itself is called laziness in Buddhism. Laziness is not just not doing things, but it's also postponement. It's also discouraging yourself. So when you see, on the one hand, you have obtained this very precious human life, but on the other hand, when you think about this impermanent nature, the transient nature of human life, you will immediately get some sensation. When are you? Death is definite, number one. Nobody can deny that. Death is definite. Just as the death is definite, if the time of death is also definite, then it's okay. We can postpone a little bit, have a little bit fun, and then later on practice. But unfortunately, the time of death is indefinite. Haven't we seen small kids dying when they're just about to crawl? Babies dying in the womb of the mother. Recently I read a very moving story of somebody who died when she was 22 years old. Very moving story. Like that, 100,000 people like that. So there is no seniority. Death will never see whether you have completed your project or not. Whether you want to come or not, no, it will come. Anytime, wherever you go. I'll tell you a story. You know, there was somebody who was standing in the marketplace. Then somebody tapped on his shoulder, and he looked back, and he saw a messenger of death standing there. He was horrified, so scared. And then the messenger of death, he said, no, this time I've not come here to take you. I'll take you next Tuesday or something like that. Then what he did? Okay, now he saw me in the marketplace. So I better move myself into the mountain and hide myself. So he ran and ran and ran. And then hid in a cave, very secure cave in a mountain. Until Tuesday, he just remained inside the cave. Early morning Tuesday or something like that, he thought, now he didn't come, he has no idea where I am, so I just go out, no problem. So he went out, was just enjoying, thinking that he escaped. Then suddenly there was tap. He looked back, messenger of death was standing there. Then this fellow said, how did you figure out that I'm here? And the messenger of death said, it should not be you who is surprised. I am surprised, How did you reach here? Because actually the Lord of Death has told me to pick you from here, not from the marketplace. You see? So there's no place where you can hide. This is like really useful. So thinking about death, thinking about suffering is not unnecessarily inviting problem, you see. But it's accepting the reality. And that acceptance of reality will completely transform your mind, transform your relationship, transform your attitude. Right? When you get this understanding that we are all going to die any time, when not sure, immediately you will be able to develop this feeling of closeness, that I must be nice to this person. When we will meet next time, nobody knows. Probably this may be our last meeting. Whatever, you think like this. It's like group of people sailing in a ship and the boat is sinking, you see. A group of people sailing in a ship and the boat is sinking, then I can't imagine anybody doing any harm to each other. Nobody there will engage in corruption. Right? So similarly, if we are able to understand that reality, will be much more patient, much more compassionate, much more loving, and that way you get much more relaxed, much more happy. You see, it's the other way around. Recently somebody asked a question to a Bhutanese when he heard about the gross happiness project in Bhutan. Then he said, what do you think is the main source of that gross happiness in Bhutan? He said, because here all of us Bhutanese, we think repeatedly on death. It looks like a paradox, but it is really true. And that's why Buddha and many other teachers, they said suffering is introduction to happiness. When you accept suffering, you understand suffering, you face the challenges, then you understand the reality. When you understand the reality, you see how we are all interconnected, interrelated, how fragile we are, how vulnerable we are. So therefore, great teachers like Shantideva, they say, you don't have to kill people, they'll die. Whereas those of us who have no understanding, then we make all these very powerful destructive nuclear bombs to destroy people. How stupid and foolish are we? And these are invented by so-called great thinkers, scientists, great leaders. So that's why I'm saying that we are lucky to have made such a precious teaching, you see, from their point of view, right? So this precious human life is very difficult to obtain, and having found this, if you are not able to extract the meaning out of it, then this is a great tragedy. So now here in this case, the questions that you may have is, still this all sounds good, but the question is there a future life? If there's no future life, then why should we talk about all this death and just enjoy life? And there it is important to understand that Buddha never said don't enjoy life. Buddha never said life is just suffering. Buddha said, yes, be happy, be enjoy, not in a negative sense. Enjoy, not in a negative sense. And in fact, all his teachings are for the purpose of giving others peace and happiness, making others live in harmony, right? So therefore, to understand this first teaching, to remove clinging to this life, you need to understand, think about these 2 points very carefully. the reality of finding this precious human life, and impermanence, meaning that there is no time to do many of these important practices. So therefore, when you know that death is definite, you should equally say, death is definite, therefore I should definitely do Dharma practice. Death is definite, therefore I should definitely do Dharma practice. Time of death is indefinite, therefore I will do Dharma practice right now. And at the time of the death, it is only spiritual practice, not anything which is of great benefit. Therefore, I will do only Dharma practice, which is of course not easy for us. But we should pay great importance for this Dharma practice. So here you need to make some decision that at least now from today onwards, every day I will spend, say, at least few minutes in the morning or in the evening. Make it a habit and read some of these beautiful texts, which is now luckily available in English, in Tibetan, and there are so many number of teachers moving around, ask them questions, understand them. Then gradually when you pick up the habit, you will find yourself how lucky you are, how happy you are, Then you will start understanding that there was a time when I have no idea how to spend time, now I have no time, because you are so much into these precious practices, and which is really charging the battery. The purpose of charging the battery is to use that flashlight when you move into the darkness. So similarly, we need to charge our mind with these spiritual teachings so that when we move into the darkness of human relationships or move into the rest of the ordinary world with many people who have no training of mind and so forth, we are going to face a lot of difficulties and problems. At that time, you will be able to face those difficulties and challenges. So now I will read from the Tsongkhapa's 3 principal aspects of the path. These two texts, I'm comparing them. I found this, they are saying the same thing. Then later on I read another text which also says they are very similar. So 3 principal aspects of the path. The 3 principal aspects of the path are renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom, understanding, emptiness. Ngenjung, Changsim, Yangtagbetawa. I pay homage to the foremost Venerable Lamas. This actually we discussed already in the other text. Lama may be your Sutric Lamas, your Tantric Lamas, or somebody who taught you even ABCD or Kakaganga, whatever. So those teachers and Lamas. The next is, so the main text is just the verses. These bold outlines are my insertion so that you are able to understand what each of these verses are saying. So the first line is paying homage. Second line is promise to compose the text. So whenever these great teachers, they write a text, they make a promise that I will write a nice text to benefit others. And the purpose of making such a promise is that when these great beings, when they make a promise, then they never break the promise, they will fulfill it. If you don't make a promise, then you might write few lines, then say, oh, I can't complete it, you see. So there is a reason why they make that promise to compose the text. I will explain as well as I can. Tsongkhapa is such a great teacher, but you can see his humility. I will explain as well as I can. The essence of all the teachings of the conqueror, the path praised by the conqueror's children, the entrance for the fortunate desiring liberation. So these 3 lines, 4 lines. The first line, Tsongkhapa says, I'll explain as well as I can. Then the next 3 lines, he is talking basically about the 3 principal aspects of the path. The first line, the second line, the essence of all the teachings of the conqueror. Now there are different interpretations. Some of the teachers, they say this second line, the essence of all the teachings of the conqueror, refers to renunciation. The path praised by the conqueror's children refers to bodhicitta. The entrance of the fortunate desiring liberation, emptiness, wisdom, understanding, emptiness. Then there are other interpreters who say the essence of all the teachings of the conqueror is actually talking about bodhicitta. The path praised by the conqueror's children, talking about renunciation. The entrance for the fortunate desiring liberation, talking about wisdom, understanding, emptiness. But both of these interpretations have its own meaning. So the essence of all the teachings of the conqueror, if you refer it to the bodhicitta, then of course, as Shantideva says in his Bodhisattva, that just like by churning the milk, you get butter. Similarly, by reading or understanding all the teachings, you get butter-like essence, which is bodhicitta. So that's why the essence of all the teachings of the conqueror, if you refer it to bodhicitta, it makes perfect sense. But if you instead want to use this as the meaning of renunciation, that also makes sense, because the purpose of all the Buddha's teaching is to help sentient beings remove suffering and get liberated. And that liberation is very much related or dependent upon renunciation. The path praised by the conqueror's children, bodhicitta. Conqueror means Buddha. Not in the sense that he conquered some countries, but he conquered over his negative emotions. And conqueror's children refers to bodhisattvas, who are called his children because bodhisattvas become bodhisattvas because of listening to his teachings. The entrance for the fortunate desiring liberation. So, fortunate desiring liberation. Desiring liberation. How many people are there who really want to get liberated from samsara? Not many. Not many. So therefore, those who desire to get liberated from samsara, they are the really few fortunate beings. So you can count yourself probably among the fortunate beings. Really. Right? Otherwise, people will say, samsara. They're enjoying samsara. Majority of the people, they're enjoying samsara. What's wrong with samsara? It's so good. There's so many things to do. So many things to, so many areas where we can get distracted, and then talk about the latest, BMW car, talk about the latest building, the latest mobile phone, and the apps found there, and so forth, So in that way they spend their whole life. Okay? Exhorting the disciples to listen. Then he is asking the students to listen carefully, because this teaching is very important. Listen carefully, not just hear, but listen. Listen. Now, listening carefully also has many meanings. One is that you don't listen to such a teaching thinking that I'll listen to this teaching, understand the meaning, and then I myself become a great teacher, a famous teacher. Then I'll get a lot of donations from the students or start my own Dharma center. Not in that sense. Okay? Now you should listen with these qualifications. Those who are not attached to the joys of cyclic existence. This is exactly what we already read. Those who are not those who are not attached to the joys of cyclic existence. Because the joys of cyclic existence are like honey that is anointed on a sharp blade. If you want to taste that honey on that very sharp blade, it might cut your tongue. And it is primarily because of this, our obsession to this ephemeral joys of the samsara, that we get stuck in the samsara. So if you are not attached to the joys of cyclic existence, instead wants to strive to make meaning of this opportunity and facilities, leisure and opportunities, Devat and Jorva, that you have. And if you want to rely on the path pleasing the conqueror, pleasing the Buddha, the path that would please the Buddha is the path of renunciation, the path of bodhicitta, the path of wisdom, understanding, emptiness. It is not the path of doing business. It's not the path of enjoying, joining the party politics. The path that would please the Buddha is a path that would help suffering sentient beings. Shantideva again in his Bodhisattva says that the only way you can please the Buddha is pleasing the suffering mother sentient beings. There's no other way. And Gampopa, who I think is the source of these other 4 lines, Lo Chosun Dovar Chinjilo, etc., he says that if you make friendship with a mother, and that mother has a young baby, small baby, and if you go take a sharp knife and cut a little bit of flesh from the leg of that baby and give it to your friend, the mother, will the mother be happy? She will be horrified. Forget about getting happy. She will be horrified. So similarly, Shantideva says, if you cheat, deceive, exploit the suffering sentient beings, and then you make an elaborate offering in the temple, will this please the Buddha? No. This is important because in many cases we do this. You engage in wrong business, cheat other people, and then you come with money, and then you, in order to get the name as a benefactor or a sponsor, you go in front of His Holiness, make this elaborate offering and give 100 rupees to all the monks and things. I'm not saying everybody, but there are people who do this. I know some of them, unfortunately. So this is because not necessarily they are very bad people, but because they don't know what is real Dharma. What is real Dharma? You see? So in the real practice of Dharma, there's no cheating. If you cheat, it's cheating yourself, right? So those fortunate ones. So you need to count yourself as fortunate ones. Listen with a clear mind. Listen with a clear mind. The Buddhist teaching says when you come for the teaching, come with a clear mind. Come with a smile on your face. Come 5 minutes earlier, not late. If you come 5 minutes late, it says something. And as soon as the teaching finishes, if you rush out, it says something. The Buddhist teaching says you go with a little bit reluctance. Oh, today's teaching finished, little bit, just like having watched a big movie, You still want to sit a little bit in the movie hall because that was a very gripping movie, you see. So like that. Fortunate ones, listen with a clear mind. Because at the end of the day, it will help you. When your friends fail, your name and fame fail, your wealth fails, it will fail. Your body fails, your health fails you, then this kind of thinking will help you. That is the bitter truth, whether you like it or not. And I know that a little bit myself. You see? So unless you have the right understanding, right way of thinking, nobody at the end of the day can help you. So therefore the Buddha himself has said, I have shown you the path to Nirvana. Nirvana is up to you. And elsewhere he said, the Buddhas do not wash the sins of sentient beings with water. The Buddhas cannot remove the sufferings of sentient beings with their hand. The Buddhas cannot transfer their realization into the mind of others. So what they can do? They can only teach you the path of the truth. And that teaching, that truth, you need to practice. So there's the truth. I mean, to be honest, let us think about like our own life. How many our dear friends, relatives, how many people died. I know several of them. I can count a long list. And most of you have that knowledge. They have idea. But then how come that we continue to think that it is they who died, but I am the one who is going to die at the end of die last. This stubborn mind, so addicted to grasping this wrong perceptions, permanence, inherent existence, and so forth. Because of this because of this very strong habituation with misperceptions, it takes time to come out. It really takes time, such a long time to come out. So it's important to make a little bit effort. Need to generate the determination to be free. Without a pure determination to be free, there is no means to achieve peace. Due to fixation upon the pleasurable effects of the ocean of existence, embodied beings are thoroughly bound by craving for existence. Therefore, in the beginning, seek determination to be free. So he is talking about the need to cultivate renunciation. Without having a pure determination to be free means without having pure renunciation, there is no means to achieve peace. Means there is no peace here means nirvana, liberation. There is no way you can achieve liberation. Now, in order to achieve that liberation, that state of total cessation of negative emotions, you need to develop this determination to be free. Now, in order to develop this determination to be free, you need to have a proper understanding of the sufferings by which you are afflicted. For example, if you are in prison, if you are in the prison and have started encountering a lot of problems, then there will be day and night this wish to come out from this prison, because you clearly know that I am in prison, I am in the prison, I am suffering. Because of this direct experience of suffering in a prison, day and night you will think about getting out of this prison. So similarly, we are in the prison of samsara, cycle of existence. We are afflicted these three types of suffering: suffering of change, conditioned suffering. So if you have a proper understanding of this suffering, then you will develop this pure wish to come out from this suffering. And that's not easy. That's not easy. Because although we say that, oh, samsara, there is no happiness, but deep down we are all saying, so far, so samsara is quite good. That's why we are scared of death, meaning you want to stay in the samsara. Scared of death means you want to continue to stay in the samsara, meaning that you are still finding this life quite comfortable, you see. Right? So therefore, if you think, Aryadeva in his 400 verses, he says, one who is not tired of this cycle of existence will never develop respect to that peaceful state of nirvana. For example, if you are somebody who is enjoying your present home, why should you think about moving to some other place? It's only when you see a lot of problems are there in this present house or home, then you will start thinking about moving to Australia, America, or whatever. So therefore it is important to understand these different types of sufferings. Due to the fixation upon the pleasure effects of the ocean of fixation with these fleeting pleasures that we experience in the samsara ocean of existence, that means sipeso, we get obsessed with it. Number one, we have this obsession and afflict emotion within ourselves. Number two, the business people and others, they are producing so many shiny, nice looking things so that you get more stuck there. We are very susceptible to these deceptions. So that's why they know, okay, this guy, I can fix them easily. So that's how these big malls came up. Embodied beings are thoroughly bound by craving for existence. Therefore, in the beginning, seek a determination to be free. So now here we are talking about two things. In the next line, next verse number 4. In the 4 lines that we read under this Sakya Pandita's explanation, first is to remove clinging to the present life. So this will be explained in the next 2 lines by Tsongkhapa. Contemplating how freedom and fortune are difficult to find, and that in life there is no time to waste, blocks the attraction to cultivating appearance of this life. If you want to stop this captivating appearance of this life or clinging to this life, then you need to contemplate precious human life. We already spoke about that. You need to contemplate how freedom and fortune are difficult to find. This precious human life is difficult to find. Number 1, this human life with freedom of fortune is difficult to find. Number two, not only that there's not much time, because death can come any time, and that in life there is no time to waste. If you develop these two understandings, the importance of your human life, and that there's no time, then this will block or stop your clinging to this life. There's no time to waste, it blocks the attraction to captivating appearances of this life. I'll stop here. If you have any questions, we have few minutes. Yeah.
My question is, I agree with the physical death, but if the death is real, what about the consciousness? Because of the consciousness, we keep, we vote again and again.
Exactly.
And even the enlightened one, because of their consciousness, they can see the past life. So I'm a little confused on that.
That's exactly, that's a good question, that's a good reminder. I had already asked you, what about future life? If there is no such thing called future life, then why should we talk about all this? So your question is relevant. So therefore, according to Buddhism, when we die, you can dispose this body, the body may come to an end, but the mind continues, carrying with it all the die-hard habits that it has formed, positive habits, negative habits. So that's why we are talking about the need to do Dharma practice. If you have undertaken Dharma practice and formed a positive habit, and that habit will be repeated in the future life, which will ensure your experiencing peace and happiness. Now still that's not very convincing. You might say, yeah, it's possible, but how can you prove that there's future life? So this is almost like asking, how can you prove that there is a mind? Because when you talk about the possibilities of future life, you need to think about the mind. We all talk about my mind is not happy, my mind is happy. We all accept that I have a body as well as a mind. But body is quite easy, we can see, we can touch, But what about this stupid thing called mind, which I can't see, which has no color, no shape? But we do say that we have mind. We all agree that we have mind, right? So how can you prove mind? Because it is non-physical, colorless, shapeless, does not mean it is non-existent. Just like the electric current that goes through the electric wire. You see the light right now here, but the current that is passing through the electric wire, you are not able to see right now. Because of your not being able to see that, you can't say it's not there. So we need to have some understanding about the laws of energy and things like that, which will really help you understand this. More convincing than that is, there are many these days, or even before, of course, there have been many people who have clear memory of their past lives. Now, if memory is related only to the physical brain, as the scientists today say, then when a person dies and all his body is disposed, including the brain, that should be the end of the story. Because the body is completely now destroyed. Then how come that these people are able to remember their past life? There are many, not just one or two. In the past, even today, there are scientists who are doing this, recording this. Thousands of children and even grown-up people have been recorded. There are several books already published. I read some of these books with very convincing memory of their past lives. And then from my point, I always also think that this also probably proves a little bit. For example, if you go to bed tonight and sleep very peacefully and maybe snoring a little bit, right? The body is more or less lifeless, it's dead, more or less. I'm not saying that, but more or less. But your mind may start shopping in New York or in Australia, whatever, you see. What is happening there? I think the subtle level of the mind or energy is still functioning and has that capacity to get new ideas, new knowledges, or even travel to other places. Probably. I'm not so sure. This is my kind of guesswork. Right? Then also another even interesting thing is like, if you fight with somebody or do something nasty today, because of that, you may experience that negative consequences tomorrow or next month or after 2 years. It's possible because your mind has experienced it and lives an imprint, and you have to experience that result subsequently. So that way you will get some understanding. Okay? Yes?
Just on that point, it seems like there's some things that people don't remember, when they come to the next life. For example, they can't speak the language that they spoke in their last life just before that. They don't remember how to walk. They don't remember many things that they studied. For example, if somebody studied the whole Kanja and Tanja, they can't just in the next life start just remembering those things. But there are things that are remembered, and they have, as you say, they've recorded many, scientifically they've recorded these experiences, when they've spoken to children, they've talked about things. So what do you think happens there in terms of the things that are carried forward to the next life and the things that are left behind?
That depends upon how strong your habituation is. In some cases, the habituation is very strong. That makes a very strong impact, which helps you remember that. In some cases, it's, like even in our day-to-day life. For example, today, in one day, how many things you have done in a day? At the end of the day, forget about past life. At the end of the day, you will not be able to remember many of these things, although you have done so many things. But some of the more striking things that you have done, for example, if you fought violently with somebody, that you will remember. Not only in the end of the day, but you might get a nightmare tonight, you see, and start fighting again. So something like that. One is habituation. Then second, there may be many reasons. The second is the pollution. We call it the pollution in the womb. And then pollution when you come to a different world. For example, if you come to this world from a different realm or something, you're completely in different, as you said, different language, different culture, and so much pollution, you are not able to remember anything. That's also possible. Then pollution of the womb, as we say. And this interestingly, this pollution, how it affects, some of the sambas, the people who do retreat, it's almost unbelievable. Those who stay high in the mountain, when they come to Meghalorganj, their mind doesn't function well. They are able to see that pollution. Although Meghalorganj, comparing to Delhi and other big cities, is really quite nice. But comparing to those people who had that experience of purity in the higher places, when they come to Meghalorganj, then they are not able to do many of these practices. And then I remember very clearly when I traveled with His Holiness to Moscow. And then His Holiness one morning said, it's very funny that this morning my practices were not as clear, as good as it always is. So it really looks like people did a lot of killing here, that area. Of course, which is true. And the same experience was shared by Khamtu Rinpoche when he visited Moscow. You see, so places where there's a lot of killing or misdeeds, again it's a polluted area, which also makes people not to remember things. So there may be many cases like that. Yeah.
So you mentioned precious human life.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about what kind of human life? Like as in, there are human beings like us who can receive your teachings, right? So I can hear, I can see, but what if someone who has a Down syndrome, so if that person does have a precious human life, but that person cannot completely receive Dharma?
But the word precious human life is primarily, I think, referred in terms of, as I said already, in terms of your human mental intelligence, their capacity. That capacity is there with everybody, whether they're listening to Dharma or even doing some very negative things, their capacity is there. So that way it is a precious human life. But now whether you use this precious human life as a real precious human life, or I always forget this opposite word for precious life, unprecious or whatever. Somebody told me, now I forgot. Anyway, so make it like useless life or whatever, So as I use the word, it's like the nuclear energy. The capacity is there, but whether you use it to make a nuclear bomb to drop on the head of other people or use it to produce electricity, it's up to you. You see? So the real precious human life is when you use that given potential to do constructive positive practices, then you are leading a real precious human life. Otherwise not. Yeah. So in the true sense of the term, you cannot say that everybody who has got this human life is a precious human life in that sense. Yeah. Ready? Ask some challenging questions. This is too cold. Okay, then we stop. Good night.